The national capital is about to vote shortly, but will Arvind Kejriwal, the Delhi Chief Minister, be out for campaigning? That's the question being debated, being discussed before the highest court of the country. The Supreme Court is asking, to be specific, a very pointed question. The question is, can Arvind Kejriwal be granted interim bail? Now, let me give our viewers the benefit of the context. Arvind Kejriwal knocked on the doors of the Apex Court, essentially challenging the arrest that was done by the ED. The ED had arrested him in the month of March. Arvind Kejriwal is challenging that. But what's important is that in the midst of hearing these arguments, Justice Khanna, who's heading this bench of the Apex Court, made some very interesting observations. An observation that he made was that should we consider a grant of interim bail to Arvind Kejriwal because the elections are currently underway. Now, it is in pursuance of that observation that we saw about 30 to 40 minutes of heated exchanges, tripartite exchanges. We have the ED, we have Arvind Kejriwal's counsels, and we have the Apex Court all making their voices heard in this debate on whether or not Arvind Kejriwal deserves to be given an interim bail. Now, in the midst of these heated exchanges, the Apex Court made some very pointed observations. Number one, the Supreme Court observed that it is not willing to give the impression, it is not looking to give the impression that some special treatment is being given to the Delhi Chief Minister because he's a politician, but rather the Apex Court is trying to understand if there is an exceptional circumstance here at play, exceptional circumstance in the form of national elections which warrant grant of interim bail. The Apex Court observed that national elections come only once in 5 years, that Arvind Kejriwal expectedly will want to campaign. In fact, this was supported by Kejriwal's counsels, who pointed out that Delhi goes to vote on May 25th, Punjab polls on June 1st, and that is something that the Apex Court should keep in mind while deciding grant of interim bail. Further, the Apex Court observed that the larger question on whether or not there should be his arrest is legal, that question could take time to decide, and that time will not come back to Arvind Kejriwal if he wants to campaign for the elections, and that even if his arrest is held to be legal, even in such a scenario, the Apex Court does have the power, does have the jurisdiction to grant interim bail. Observations falling from the Apex Court. Now, these observations were supported by Arvind Kejriwal. His counsel, Abhishek Manu Singhvi, submitted that he's not a terrorist, he's not a history cheater, his conduct does not raise questions, at least not enough for the Apex Court to be worried if he's released on interim bail. And further, they also submitted, the counsels for Kejriwal submitted that he will also undertake to not sign any files, to not visit his office if it satisfies the Apex Court for grant of interim bail. Now, this was clearly disputed and argued against vociferously by the Enforcement Directorate. The ED said that the Apex Court, it would be unfortunate if the Supreme Court sends out such a message, that the Apex Court needs to be careful, that some persons should not be seen to be more equal than others, that no special dispensation should be given to Arvind Kejriwal, least of all because he's a politician, least of all because he's facing tough charges under a criminal offense such as PMLA, and further going on to say that this will open floodgates. If the Apex Court were to grant this special relief to Arvind Kejriwal, this will open floodgates, this will disrupt the criminal law framework as we know, and this was a concern expressed by the ED. Now, what's important is that the Apex Court, at least for now, has not given a decisive view on which way it is leaning towards. However, what it has said is that the hearing is likely to resume on May 9th, and that's perhaps when we can expect more clarity on whether or not Arvind Kejriwal will be behind bars for the duration of these national elections, or whether the Apex Court sees merit or sees exceptional circumstances that warrant Arvind Kejriwal to be released, at least for purposes of campaigning for these national elections. An important question that May 9th perhaps may hold the answer coming from the Apex Court.